Bethesda often likes to keep quiet about their upcoming games, and that's not any different for Starfield. Although, some of their most recent announcements did show a lot about the character creation, so let's talk about it. Character creation in Starfield is not vastly different than the previous open world RPGs they've made, but they did add a lot of new features that would make this the most customizable experience yet. Here we have some footage from the Bethesda showcase back in June. You start out with some randomly created profiles that you can choose from where it just kind of like automatically throws together details and creates a player from scratch for you, so you don't have to like do all the customization, but there's really no fun in that. But if you decide to go further into the customization, there's a lot more options. Here they show kind of like a new body type mechanic where you have this like circle. You get to choose between muscular, thin, and heavy. This is kind of the same as what they used in Fallout 4. The one in Fallout 4 was a little bit more confusing though because it was a triangle with just like a thin line around the outside, which kind of made you feel like you had to choose like in between the different options instead of picking anywhere in the middle. This one's a little bit more clear, so it's most likely a little bit easier to use as well. You can also choose how your character walks in the game, which just seems crazy that this is the first time you have that option. I know that a lot of people probably play these games in, first-person mode, so you don't really see your own character walking, but for those playing in third person, I'm sure they'll really appreciate this. Face customization here doesn't really seem a whole lot different than in the previous RPGs they've made, but if it's anything like what's in Fallout 4 and in the older Elder Scrolls games, you can make some crazy-looking characters. And I'm serious, you can get really crazy with some of these. I'll put some really absurd ones right on the screen here. These are from a YouTube video I saw from the channel French Tomahawk, and they even go into detail on how they make these faces. I definitely recommend going to check out that channel. There's some absolutely crazy faces. Backgrounds appear to be kind of like a character class system where you have some starter abilities where they kind of bundle them together to kind of help you start out the game. It looks like you do have to choose a background, but you only get to choose one background. Now there's a pretty large list of backgrounds right here on the right hand side, but unfortunately Bethesda only really gave us a closer look at a few of them. I'll put them up on the screen, but I won't read them verbatim just for time's sake, but I will go over the different skills and kind of point out some of the weird things that each of them have. Now the first one we see here is Chef, and if you read the first sentence, the word chunks being capitalized kind of off-putting. It sounds like that might actually be some kind of brand of food or a kind of food that's in the game. I don't know, it's a little rough. The chef's starting skills are gastronomy, where it looks like you can craft some specialty food and drinks and research additional recipes at a research lab. Dueling, so melee weapons do 10% more damage, which kind of makes sense for a chef. You'd have some better knife skills. Wellness, you immediately gain 30 points of health. Extra health would definitely be really useful right in the beginning of the game. The next we see is Combat Medic. So the first starting skill is Pistol Certification, where you get 10% more damage for pistols. Medicine, med packs do 10% more damage, which makes sense. And weightlifting, so that increases your carrying capacity by 10 kilograms, which is kind of interesting that they did go with kilograms here. In previous Bethesda RPGs, they really didn't add a unit to the weight of things. In Skyrim, they were just kind of weight points. In Fallout, I think it kind of more aligned with the pound instead of the kilogram, and you can kind of see this if you pick up weights. An 80-pound weight weighs 80, although it doesn't necessarily say pounds in the game. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how much you can actually carry in this game, and if adding 10 extra points to your carrying capacity is actually worth it. Cyber Runner, with the starting skills of Pistol Certification again. Security, you can attempt to hack advanced locks when 2 auto attempts can be banked. We did get a short glimpse of hacking a lock on a container in the Bethesda showcase, and it seems kind of like a cool mini game where you spin around and match up the 2 different lines with the circles. Now imagine the harder the lock, the more rings you have to get through just to get through the lock and open the container. And auto attempts are probably just automatically just aligning the 2 lines to unlock that level. So getting more auto attempts probably would be really nice. And last one we have here is Persuasion. You gain an increased chance of success on speech challenges, so Persuasion is probably a really useful skill to have. Alright, the next background we see is Cyberneticist, which sounds made up. And the description itself is actually kind of terrifying if you pause it and read the whole thing. As we see the starting skills here, we see medicine again, robotics dealing 10% more damage to robots and turrets, and lasers to do 10% more damage using laser weapons. Now diplomat's the background that I probably would choose. It gives a lot of speech options, which are things I really like to have in these Bethesda RPGs. It gives you more options in case there's like a really annoying quest. Sometimes you can get through it with just talking your way through it, which is awesome. Now the starting skills with diplomat, you get Persuasion again, Diplomacy, where you can force a target NPC at or below your level to stop fighting for a while. It is definitely a skill that's been in previous Bethesda RPGs, but it is nice to have. And the last one here is bargaining, where you can buy items for 5% less and sell for 10% more, which, especially when you're starting out, that's going to be an awesome feature. All right, again, that's all the backgrounds that they did show, but there's a lot more that was on the right that I'd like to list for you. So we see Beast Hunter, Bouncer, Bounty Hunter, Explorer, Gangster, Homesteader, Industrialist, Long Hauler, Pilgrim, Professor, and Ronin. That's not to say that there may actually be more in this list that we just can't see, and there actually may be more added before the game actually releases, but these are the ones that we see in the footage that they have. Traits are a thing that they've been talking about a lot most recently, and traits are really an optional add-on. They add one positive thing, but they also add one negative thing. You can add as many as 3 and as little as 0. Now, some of these traits did show up in the original Bethesda showcase video back in June, and some showed up in the Constellation Questions Q&A video that Todd Howard released just recently. I'm going to add these together into kind of categories, into like the regular traits, the faction traits, and the religion traits. And that's how I'll display them here, not just in the order that they showed up in the video. First traits I'm going to go through are kind of like the regular traits. They're not linked to any kind of faction, religion, or anything special. You can just add these traits and they don't really affect an overall thing in the game, just more like your specific gameplay. We have Introvert, where you get more endurance and health when traveling alone with no companions. It does say human companions, so I wonder if there's like a pet or like something kind of like a robotic companion that you can have with you that doesn't affect this, and that is only just other human companions. And I also wonder if this is something that affects you if you are required to have a companion in a quest. I know sometimes that does happen in Bethesda RPGs, so I'm really hoping it's not a detriment to when you're required to have that. And now Introvert does mention that it can't be added with Extrovert, so Extrovert does the opposite. When you have companions with you, your endurance and your health are increased instead of decreased. Kid stuff. So kid stuff is kind of an interesting one. We'll get to why it's interesting a little bit later, but for this trait, your parents are alive and well, and you can visit them at their home. But 10% of all the money you earn in the game gets automatically deducted and sent straight to them. With space, you get a higher health and endurance when you're out in space. And with terra firma, you get that when you're on a planet. And I like the opposite. When you have space, you lose that health and endurance when you're on the planet, and with terra firma, you lose that health and endurance when you're out in space. And then we have alien DNA. You volunteered for a controversial experiment that combines alien and human DNA. As a result, you start with a higher health pool and greater endurance, but healing items aren't as effective. I don't know about losing effectiveness for healing items, but more health and endurance in the beginning of the game is probably really useful. Hero worship is kind of actually a throwback to something from Oblivion. When you complete the arena, you get chased around by an adoring fan and he kind of bothers you. They go more into it in this video up here, but this is definitely a trait that I'm going to be selecting when I first played through Starfield. It's going to be one of the funniest traits to pick. Now, Starter Home is the trait that they showed off in the Bethesda showcase back in June, but in the Constellation Questions video, they showed off a different one called Dream Home. So we'll go over what both of them say. And it looks like Dream Home may be actually taking over Starter Home as the official trait that's going to be in the game. And for Starter Home, it says you own a small house on a peaceful little moon, but it comes with a 50,000 credit mortgage with Galbank. But in Dream Home, it says you own a luxurious, customizable house on a peaceful planet, and unfortunately comes with a $50,000 credit mortgage from Galbank, and this has to be paid weekly. Well, the original Starter Home didn't necessarily say specifically that, but it looks like with Dream Home, it'll have to be paid weekly. Now with Empath, when you do something that your companion likes, it'll increase their combat effectiveness, but if you do something that they don't like, it'll do the opposite. It'll reduce their combat effectiveness. And I imagine Empath is probably not a trait you're going to want to pick if you pick Introvert. All right, the next couple traits are faction traits. So there's certain factions in the game, so if you are playing through maybe a new character and you're already familiar with all the factions, you can choose which one that you think that you're going to be aligning with that character, and it'll give you special bonuses for that faction. Now all these faction traits seem to be kind of the same. You get special dialogue options, maybe special missions, and even special rewards for those factions, but your crime bounty for the other factions goes way up. And you can only choose one of these traits. If you choose the one faction like the Neon Street Rat, then you can't pick any other faction traits. Now the religion traits are kind of similar to the faction traits, where you can only pick one religion trait and you're kind of stuck with that religion trait. So if you know you want to pick one of these religions while you're playing through the game, you can pick that religion trait and you get special bonuses, like you get discounts at that religion store and maybe some extra missions or dialogue options with people of those religions. The one religious trait though that seems to be kind of on its own, completely different from the others, is Serpent's Embrace. Now with Serpent's Embrace, it says here, you grew up worshipping the Great Serpent. Grab jumping provides a temporary boost to health and endurance, but health and endurance are lowered if you don't continue jumping regularly like an addiction. Now, if I were to pick one of these religious traits, this is the one I would pick. This sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. It'd probably add a lot to the game. And, even if you were in a situation where you can't really keep on jumping, that kind of makes it harder. It makes it a lot more exciting. In the Constellation Questions video, Todd Howard did mention that they're going to put in some kind of quest that you can do to remove a trait in the middle of the game. You really don't want to have that trait anymore. Instead of having to start the whole game from scratch, you can do a quest, remove that trait, and then you'll be done with it. But like I mentioned before, the kid stuff trait, having your parents be alive, and having you send 10% of your money to them, does that mean that there's going to be a quest where you have to basically kill your parents, or that you cut ties with your parents? I don't know. We'll have to see more when the game releases, I guess. That's pretty much everything they had for the character creation, but I'm going to be doing some more Starfield videos as this information comes in, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and click here to subscribe. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.